and still looking at plant life. We are looking at plant life. But under plant life, we are asking ourselves the characteristics of insect and wind-pollinated flowers. We are looking at the characteristics of wind and insect pollinated flowers. That's what we want to look at today. We'll be looking at the characteristics of wind and insect pollinated flowers. But under this, we're looking at plant life. So, there we go, children. What are we looking at? Plant life. But under plant life, we are looking at characteristics of wind and insect pollinated flowers. Characteristics of insect and wind pollinated flowers. Let's look at the word, that one big word, characteristics. It is not a new word, it's not very big, so you don't need to get worried, children. When I talk about characteristics, we are looking at what are some of the things that these flowers have that allows them to be pollinated by insects or by wind. Let's look at maybe characteristics of living things. Let's look at you. What are some of the things you do? You breathe, you have the legs, you have the eyes, you have the brain. So similarly, we are going to look at the flower and we ask ourselves, what are some of the things that a flower has that allows it to be pollinated by insects or pollinated by wind? We know very well pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anthers to the stigma. The pollen can be carried by insects or the pollen can be carried by wind. So, looking at wind-pollinated flowers, what makes it easy for wind to take the pollen? For insect-pollinated flowers, what makes it easy for insects to carry the pollen? Are we together, children? This is what we want to look at. I've been trying to explain the words I've written on the blackboard. Which are the words again? Characteristics of wind and insect pollinated flowers. Characteristics of wind and insect pollinated flowers. So what are we going to say? We shall say different flowers have different features, have different parts, have different things that allows them to be pollinated. I have a variety of flowers. I have this rose flower. I have a rose flower. I have another flower here, Look at them. Do they have a difference? What would fall on this one? Can an insect fall on this flower? If yes, what would make an insect fall on this flower? Look at this flower also. What type of pollination is this likely to take? What about if I bring my flower like this? Can an insect easily see this? Can a bee come and see this? Is it insect pollinated? Or is it pollinated by wind? It's what we want to look at, the characteristics. So children, we begin with the first type of flower, and we want to look at the flowers pollinated by insects. Insect pollinated flowers. What do they have? Children, our point number one, the first group, or let's call this time call it A. Let's begin with those we are calling the insect pollinated. The insect pollinated flowers. The insect pollinated flowers. How do they look like? What do they have? Insect pollinated flowers. What do they have? What do they look like? I know we are very eager. We want to discover more about this. Let's discover this when we come back from this very short break.
Time now for Fan Fact.
Welcome back from that short break, children. Before you went for the break, I had tried to explain. I wanted us to understand when I say characteristics, the features, the things that these flowers have that enables them to be either pollinated by insects or pollinated by wind. And the first example we looked at that are written on the blackboard is those we are calling insect pollinated flowers. Children, with me I have a variety of flowers. A variety of flowers. And I will be showing you. Look at them. And it's you to tell me the differences or what? By looking at this flower. Look at that flower carefully, children. It has the stigma up, but surrounded by the anther heads. The anther heads. When you go down, there is this part of the flower called the petals. So this flower here is pollinated by insects. This flower is pollinated by insects. Now the question, children, is what does this flower possess? What does it have to allow it to be pollinated by insects? Why would insects come onto this flower? That is the question I'm posing to you, children. I know you're thinking about it. I'm giving you a few seconds. Try talking to your friend. Why would you think a flower like this would be pollinated by insects? Look at it again, children. As I bring this one down, I bring another flower. Look at the flower again. Does it have something in common? Yes. There is something in common. With the first flower I showed you. This flower also is pollinated by insects. What does it have? Before I give you, make sure you're discussing those answers with your friend. I bring here my lovely rose flower. Look at my rose flower again. Look at it. It has some things. What is it? What would you make you go for this flower? What would make an insect go for this flower? They are the ones we are calling characteristics. Children, I bring in yet another very nice flower. Looking at our flower here, what would make an insect go for this? And then finally, I would bring another flower. Look at that. They all have something in common. They have something in common. Children, if I put this flower out and I put this flower out, which one of the two will the insects go for? Flower A, flower B. Which one will the insects go for? I think they'll go for flower A. Why? It's because of the answers you have. So answer number 1, flowers that are pollinated by insects that we call insect pollinated flowers is they have bright colored petals. Good. Your answer was right. So number 1, we say these flowers have bright colored petals. We say the flowers have bright colored petals. They have bright colored petals. Children, don't forget the word colored. The colors are bright. They look very lovely. Secondly, children, when you smell this flower, it smells nice. If you smell it, very nice indeed. If you smelled this flower, very, very nice indeed. These flowers, pollinated by insects, they have a sweet smell. But in science, we don't call it smell. We call it scent. So we are saying, number 2, children, that these flowers have a sweet scent. We are saying the flowers have sweet smell. But in science, don't call it smell. Call it scent. Spelled S-C-E-N-T. They have nice scent. Children, these flowers, they also produce a lot of nectar. Nectar is that liquid that insects look for in the flowers. If you look at my hands are dry, should I open up these flowers, children, you will find that my hand will all be wet. My hand will be wet. My hand will be wet. If you open up a flower here, the hand will be wet. That sweet something inside that insects look for is the one we call nectar. So we are saying, number 3, the flowers produce a lot of nectar. They produce a lot of nectar. Don't forget, we are looking at characteristics of insect and wind-pollinated flowers. Let's continue learning more of these when we come back from this short break, children.
Do you know your plants and animals?
Welcome back from that short break, children. We have so far looked at 3 characteristics, things that you would look at and say, wow, this flower here must be pollinated by insects. Or if you have moved along, you must have seen these 3 things I've written on the blackboard. If you have seen an insect falling on the flower, it's because the flower has very bright colors. Like you also, you would got something which is very brightly colored. You would go for something which looks nice. Even insects go for those flowers that look nice, that have bright colors. 2, the flowers have a sweet smell. Every time you get a flower and there is an insect, pick it and smell it. Wow, the smell is nice. The scent is good. It is that one that attracts insects. And then lastly, the flowers produce a lot of nectar. Why would they produce a lot of nectar? For insects to come and take. When an insect comes and takes the nectar, it goes back. I don't know whether it tells the friend that, my friend, there is more nectar in the other flower, and another one will come, another one will come, another one will come, the whole family will come looking for that sweet nectar. In doing that, they carry pollen. And once pollen is carried and taken to another flower, pollination will take place. Now, children, there are very many others, but as for now, we shall look at only those. We cross over to our friends that are pollinated by wind, and we call them wind-pollinated flowers. So our second group is that we call the wind. This is going to be group number 2, or group number B, that we are calling the wind. Wind-pollinated flowers. Wind-pollinated flowers. The wind-pollinated flowers are the ones that we are looking at next, children. But before I give you any answers, I would just show you. This flower here is pollinated by wind. This flower is pollinated by wind. It's pollinated by wind. This flower here, I know people are going to say, sir, you mean those are flowers? Yes. Each of these small ones you see, it's a flower. Each of these smaller ones is a flower. These flowers are pollinated by wind. The wind will blow, and as the wind blows, the pollen will also move along that. As it comes back, as it shakes, the pollen falls off, and there are stigmas out there receive the pollen. And once they receive the pollen, pollination has taken place. Look at, for example, maize. The flowers are up there, and then there are smaller flowers down. Once the wind shakes that, the small hairs, girls, I know you enjoy playing with that. When the maize is just coming up, all those ones are ready to receive pollen. And once they receive pollen, then pollination has taken place. Now, look at this flower and look at the flower and tell me the difference. This has a bright colored petal, while these ones, the petals are not brightly colored. So that one gives us answer number 1. The characteristics of wind-pollinated flowers, number 1 is they don't have brightly colored petals. So instead they have dull. So number 1, we shall say they have dull colored petals. Whereas our friends have brightly colored petals, these ones, they have dull colored petals. If you get this flower and you smell it, you hardly get any smell. You don't. It is not there. Therefore, if you also got this flower here and try it smelling, you don't get any. So what are we saying? They don't produce, they don't have the sweet, pleasant smell. They don't have the sweet, pleasant smell. So our number 2 is, we say, they do not have the sweet scent. This time I'm going to write the word scent. I'm not writing smell because I want you to be good science children. You know, when I write scent, I'm talking about smell. So they don't have the sweet smell to attract the insects. And then children next. After that, we are saying these flowers, they have no nectar. They don't produce a lot of nectar. There is no nectar in these flowers. Besides, there are no insects coming for the nectar. So these flowers, look at the maize, that upper part there of the maize. No nectar at all. Look at my grasses that I've just shown you. Look at my grasses, children. They have no nectar. So we are saying that they don't produce nectar as our point number 3. We say the flowers. The flowers do not produce nectar. Please, nectar is N-E-C-T-A-R. They don't produce the nectar. And then we have other other answers we could add on that, including they produce a lot of pollen. Why? Chances are the wind will blow that side when the flowers that need the pollen are this side. So in doing that, they produce a lot of pollen. Number 4. The flowers produce a lot of pollen. They produce a lot of pollen. So children, what have we looked at? We have been looking at characteristics of wind and insect pollinated flowers. And that if you moved out there, how would you know that this flower is pollinated by insect or is pollinated by wind? The reasons are, if these ones have brightly colored petals, those ones don't. If these ones produce a good smell, those ones don't. If those ones have a lot of nectar, these ones don't. Just compare the opposite of this one to that one, and you'll have the answers right. With that, children, we come to the end of our lesson. Thank you for being good children. Till we meet again, may God bless you.
Sarah says, learn, hold on, and succeed.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Speed is how fast something moves. Maybe this expression has something to do with car racing.
Jonathan, did you get a dog?
No, I'm just watching Ashley's dog this weekend, so I'm getting up to speed on basic dog care.
Oh dear.
What?
Look, her dog can be a little Unusual.
It's just a dog, right?
If you get up to speed, you learn information that is necessary to do something. Sometimes you need to get up to speed to know as much as someone else. Think of it as an information race. And that's English in a minute.
Welcome everybody to my school. I'm teacher Lillian, going to take you through our English lesson. Our topic today, we are still looking at the words we use to describe people and objects. Describing people and objects. That's our topic. We are still looking at the adjective words. Those are the words we use to describe people and objects. And in our lesson today, we are looking at the words we use to describe objects. So we are still looking at the words which we are going to use to describe objects. But before we look at the words we are going to look at today, let's remind ourselves of the words we looked at or the topic we had in our previous lesson. In our previous lesson, we tried to look at what do we consider when we are describing objects, because remember, objects are not their non-living things. So what do we use when we are describing non-living things? We consider the size of the object. We describe the objects looking at the size. Some objects are big, others are small, others are long, and so on. We also look at the shape of the object. Some shapes are squared, others are rectangular, others are oval, circle, and so on. So those are the shapes we look at when we are trying to describe the objects. 2, we also look at the color. What's the color of your house? So I can say a green house. What's the color of your shirt? I can say a black shirt. So we look at the color as we describe objects. We also look at the materials. When we are looking at the objects, I want to describe something, but I want to look at the material. How was it made? For example, our table here, this is a wooden table. I describe it using the material in which it was got from. So we use the materials. And also we looked at the purpose. What's the purpose of that object? Is it a glass for drinking water? Is it a glass for putting in flowers? So the purpose of that object, so I can describe or I can tell you to get me that object, you following the purpose or the use of that object. I can also describe the object looking at the origin. Where was it made from? For example, if I want a watch which was made from USA, I can say I want that one from USA. Or if there is any in Uganda, I can ask that one from Uganda. I'm looking at the origin of the object. That's how I can describe it if I want you to get me one. And then lastly, we looked at the opinion of the object. How would you like the object? Is it a good one? Is it a good chair? Is it a good table? Is it a hard one? So we look at the opinion, how you consider that object. So from that one, let's look at our topic today. We are going to look at some different objects and adjective words which we shall use to describe our objects. Remember, the adjectives, these are words we use to describe the objects, or they tell us more about what we are talking about. If I'm talking about a chair, I should describe it using the adjective words. Now, I have my picture here. We are going to use the right word to describe it. Maybe what I have to tell you about the picture, we can see a young girl down here carrying something on the head, and we are calling this one a sack. So if I want to describe this sack, I'll call it a heavy sack. I call it a heavy sack. I am describing, following the size, it's a heavy sack. We are describing the object, the sack, which is heavy. I also have my other object here. We are going to describe this object together. That is a chair. But when you look at it properly, the way you see it, we can describe it as a rough chair. It's rough. Because I don't think when you sit here, you will not feel anything the way it was made. That means this chair is rough. We are describing it. I also have another object here. This is my pencil. My pencil here, which I described as a long pencil. Remember, children, we are looking at the adjective words which we use to describe objects. So what we have here, these are the simple objects which we are trying to describe using our adjective words, like heavy, rough, and long. Let's continue. I have another object here. Which is a door. Now we are looking at the shape. If it's a door, what type of a door is that? We are going to call it a squared door. The shape, it is a squared door. We are describing it. That's how we have come up with that one. I also have something here. You can call it a stick, or you can call it a piece of chalk, but we are looking at the size of that stick. We are going to call it a short stick, a short stick. We are getting the adjectives. So before we read through our adjective words, let's go for a short break. We shall come back and read through our adjective words.
Time now for Fan Fact.
Yes, my friends, welcome back from that short break. Yes, before you went for that short break, you're with Teacher Lillian taking you through our English lesson. And in our English lesson, we are looking at the describing words which we use to describe people and objects. But today, we are looking at the adjective words, or the words we use to describe objects. Our objects are here. We have tried to draw them as you see them here. And what we see on the side, those are the adjective words we have used to describe these objects which we have here. We said when we are describing objects, we look at the size of the object, we look at the shape, we look at the color, and so on, as we saw in our previous lesson. Now, our first one, we have the word heavy, trying to describe what we have in the picture here. That means the sack is heavy. We are describing the sack. There might be very many sacks around, but you pick on a heavy one. So somebody can tell you, "Go pick me a heavy sack." You directly go to the sack you feel it is heavy. Also, we looked at our second picture, the chair. When you look at it critically here, you discover that it's a bit rough. So I can describe it as a rough chair, and I say, don't sit on a rough chair. So you go and look for a smooth one, and then you leave the rough chair. We have also looked at our next picture, which is a pencil, and we described it as a long pencil. Remember, children, we are describing objects. We are describing objects. Our fourth object, it's a door. We also describe objects considering the shape. What is the shape of whatever object you are having? What's the shape of your house? What's the shape of the neighbor's house? What's the shape of the teacher's table? What's the shape of your cup? And so on. So for our door here, it's a squared door. So we are describing this one. We saw something here as a stick or a chalk. So you can call it a short stick. Now I said, before we went to our short break, we're supposed to spell our adjective word so that even if I wake you up, you will be able to spell the word. You'll be able to spell the given words. For example, if I give you this word here, which word is that from the words we have seen around? Of course, you know that the teacher is trying to give us the word rough, but not written properly, so that you can be able to arrange the words and you write it properly. So the word is rough, which is R-O-U-G-H, the word rough. So let's write our word correctly. It's not necessary that the teacher will begin with the first word. She can mix them up, but you should be able to learn the spellings. Let's get another word. Our next word stands the way you see it there. Which word are we trying to spell from what we have looked at? Of course, you know we are trying to spell the word long. We are learning the spelling of our adjective words. Let's get another word. Which word is the teacher trying to spell? The teacher is trying to spell the word heavy. Heavy, which begins with the letter H, E, A, V, and Y. Let's continue with our spellings. We spell the word short. With all those letters, if it is to be spelled, you'll be able to spell the word short as S, beginning with S, H, O, R, T. So those are the letters we have in our Jamboree word. Then let's spell also our last word, which we have looked at. It seems to have so many letters, but that's the word squared. Let's write it properly. So we have tried to spell our words which we have looked at, which we use when we are describing objects. The first word is rough. Rough. The second one is long. Long. Our next word, heavy. Heavy. short. And our last word is squared. That's how we can learn how to spell the words in English. What you do, you jumble the letters, you mix them up, but with the time, if you know how to read the word, you will be able to spell them correctly, even if they are all mixed up. So those are the words we have tried to spell. Now, let's construct some sentences using our adjective words. Construct sentences using the given words. So that's our instruction. Construct sentences using our given words. Which words? The words we have looked at when we were describing our objects. These are the words, these are the adjectives which we have looked at, and they are the ones we are going to use when constructing sentences. And how should our sentence begin? Begin, it is, and so on. So let's underline our instructions. Our instructions. Remember, children, always to follow the instructions. So before we get the sentences, let's go for a short break. We shall come back and we'll continue with our sentences. Good children, welcome back from that short break. I'm Teacher Lydian once again. Before you went for that short break, we were looking at our adjective words which we use to describe objects. And if we have those words to describe objects, we are supposed to begin constructing our sentences using which words? These ones which we have looked at when we are describing our given objects for today. We'll have rough, long, heavy, short, and squared. We are describing the different objects, looking at their size, looking at their shape, the color, the material, the purpose, origin, and the use. What do we use them for? So these are the words we have tried to come up with. Remember, children, there are so many words. There are so many adjective words which you can use to describe the objects, but today we have tried to get only those ones so that when you go back over there, you will be able to get more adjective words to describe the different objects around you. So let's go to our sentences. Our sentence number 1 is going to begin with, we are going to write our sentences, or we are going to construct our sentences following our pictures and also our adjective word. And we shall say, it is a heavy sack. From our first word, we shall say that it is a heavy sack. Maybe you can even say it is a very heavy sack for her. Because if you can see the person carrying Lily, it is heavy. Our second sentence, we are going to use rough. We shall say, it is a rough chair. That's what we have looked at. Remember, children, adjective words, we use them to describe nouns. And what is a noun? A noun is a name of anything. So what we are trying to describe, those are the nouns, or those are the objects we have looked at. So we are describing the chair, which is rough. We are describing the sack, which is heavy. Let's continue. Number 3, long. We say, it is a long pencil. It is a long pencil. Your mother's bought for you a pencil, so you can describe it as a long pencil or a short pencil. Let's go to our 4th sentence. Who is giving it to us using the word squared? Yes, let's take that one and we say, we are following the instruction and we say, it is a squared door. It is a squared door. It can also be a squared box. It can be a squared chair, table, a squared window. You are describing the noun. Let's get our next sentence, which we are going to call sentence number 5. And we say, it is a short stick. Yes, we have tried to get very simple short sentences, but they are correct. We are trying to develop our speaking skill by first of all, begin with short, simple sentences using the given words. We have been given the word heavy, but we've tried to construct a sentence saying, it is a heavy sack. You are describing, at the same time, you are constructing very good sentences. So let's read through our sentences. Sentence number 1, it is a heavy sack. Sentence number 2, it is a rough chair. Sentence number 3, it is a long pencil. Next, it is a squared door. You are describing the door. Sentence number 5, it is a short stick. So let's try to underline on our adjective words which we have looked at today. The first one, we look at the word heavy. And I know, children, you will be able to write those words correctly. Our next word, we look at the word rough. Our next word, we looked at the word long. Next, squared, and also short. All our adjective words come from the category we gave, what we consider when we are describing the objects, when we are describing the nouns which are our objects, not people. So all these words came from our list. Now, children, after constructing these good sentences, you will be able to describe more objects on your own. Look in your classes. Can you describe those objects in your class? The blackboard, the teacher's table, your books, and so on. Go home. Can you describe those objects at home? For example, your mother decided to send you somewhere and she tries to describe something. Can't you bring that one out? You'll be able to describe the object so that the person will understand. If at all you want to be directed or you are directing somebody, you use the describing words for objects. You'll be able. Now, let's try to go through what we have looked at together, and then we shall see our lesson. Today, we have been looking at the words we use to describe objects. We looked at heavy, rough, long, short, squared. Those are the adjectives. And we are looking at these pictures so that we describe them looking at the adjective and the picture. We tried also to learn how to spell our words. We have tried to spell our adjective words. From there, we constructed simple sentences following the instructions. Dear good children, thanks for being with me in my school. Thanks for enjoying the lesson. Let's meet next time. God bless you.
Sarah says, be kind to others.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Patriotism is a feeling of love, devotion, and the willingness to sacrifice for one's country.
I say no to corruption because I put my country first. I choose peace over violence because I put my country first.
I love Uganda. I serve Uganda. I sacrifice for Uganda. I'm loyal to Uganda. I love myself.
Be patriotic. Uganda first. This message is brought to you by the National Secretariat for Patriotism Co-Uganda, Office of the President.
Welcome to Coffee Production Tips, brought to you by Uganda Coffee Development Authority. Uganda Coffee Development Authority is the government agency mandated to promote and oversee the coffee industry as a whole by developing research, facilitating coffee production and productivity, by training farmers on good agricultural practices, controlling the quality and improving the marketing of coffee for the benefit of stakeholders. In this series, a trained farmer, Mr. Wally Christopher, gives tips and demonstrates digging the hole, planting coffee seedlings, mulching, training coffee seedlings, and stamping coffee.
People have not been mulching their coffee, and we want to start. We are going to reintroduce mulching of coffee because that is a climate smart technology. Whenever it rains, the water will do what? Will sustain water because the slope is this. So that you maintain the soil temperature, you maintain the soil moisture. So I leave this space. Why? The termites, because whenever I put a dry element on the ground, our friends the termite will come to break it down, to start the decomposition process. As they do, they will attack your what? Coffee. So you leave this space so that the termites and other insects don't tamper with the what? And that rain which comes will just go in, also here, but it will be sustained so that the rate of evaporation is checked. We put ash around. This ash is very good. First, it irritates the insects which could have attacked the what? Our coffee. If you spot any disease somewhere, you can just peel off or remove that leaf completely, and you burn it somewhere. Yeah, before running straight to the what? To the drugs, to the agrochemicals. So that's my advice. Yeah, after planting, you go to your small office and you make a record of what you have done and maybe the expenses which have been incurred on that garden. If it is pure stand or gap filling, you put the costs and the activities so that you don't mind writing the very professional books. You just write planting, digging holes, etc. My ranch, that is it. It will be for the professionals to come, the agriculture officers, the what, to analyze for you these records.
Farmers are encouraged to adopt good agricultural practices to get high yields, good prices, and better income from coffee. These tips are brought to you by Uganda Coffee Development Authority.
Hello everyone, welcome to my school. I'm teacher Judith and I'm going to teach you mathematics. We have been looking at whole numbers and we are continuing with whole numbers. In our lesson today, we are going to look at rounding off whole numbers to the nearest tens. Rounding off whole numbers to the nearest tens. And which tens are we talking about? We are talking about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90.